It's the RSA Real Estate Advice Show on News Talk 98.1 WTSN.
Good morning and welcome to the RSA Real Estate Sales Advice Radio Show. I'm Dave Andreessen. Thanks for joining us here on this Saturday morning, where I'm joined by the founder of RSA Realty, Packy Campbell. Good morning.
Good morning, Dave. Great to be here.
What are some of the things that you want to let the listener know about?
Well, I think I want to let them know that, RSA Realty is in the Rochester is our main office and next to Staples Plaza. And then we have an office in Farmington, New Hampshire. But the big thing I want them to know is that we sell real estate sales advice, that we're here to give them advice about what is sometimes the biggest financial transactions of people's lives. And I think it's important that they seek out a real estate firm with the experience and then just with some macro principles on how to be proactive versus reactive in a real estate transaction.
Right. So you started about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I started in real estate in 1998 in actually Dover, New Hampshire. I was working for a franchise outfit. I worked there for about 18 months, and I told the broker that hired me, I said, well, don't be upset with me. I'm going to start my own company, and I'm going to get my broker's license.
Yeah.
And at the time, it took 2 years before they'd let you be a broker, and I did it in a year and a half. And then we started RSA Realty in the year 2000. And the woman that hired me was a great mentor, and she taught me a lot. And I remember her being upset when I left. And I just said to her, I says, I understand that you're upset, but I did exactly what I told you I would do.
Yeah, right.
And she stopped and she said, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You said what you were going to do, and you did what you said.
Right.
And we've been lifelong friends ever since.
Oh, that's
and
great.
She's cheering for me in my business, and I'm cheering for her in her business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the, kind of the, one of the advice things that I'd have is let's cheer for each other. Let's have an abundance mentality. And that's one of the core values of RSA Realty. And no matter which office you work with or what realtors you work with, that's the advice in the mentality that shapes the way we manage a transaction.
So what made you get into real estate? Because that's a big change. What were you doing before you got into real estate? Because I know some people make a big career change and they decide they want to have a little bit more of the flexibility, also with the potential to make a lot of money in realty.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I often joke that, I didn't get into real estate sales because I wasn't good at selling vacuum cleaners. I got into real estate sales because I like sales.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed real estate, and I was doing transactions, and I was probably 18 when I first thought about getting my real estate license. So I'm kind of an odd duck. This isn't like a secondary career or a supplemental career. This is actually my full-time gig.
Yeah.
And really I got into selling real estate because I got into real estate investing at a young age. We would say that, there's money in being a real estate broker, and I enjoy that, but the money is in the real estate.
Sure.
So let me say that again. The money is in the real estate. So invest in real estate. If you can buy an additional property and hold it as a rental property, or buy a house and build some equity in it, for a lot of people, that's a good retirement plan.
Well, it's obvious that you have a passion for real estate then.
Yeah, I do. And what I found was that I didn't have the financial capability. I was doing 1 or 2 transactions a year in my early 20s, and that was really fun. And I said, gee, I like these transactions. So I said, I'll become a broker. And I started doing transactions for other people. And throughout the years, we've made a lot of good investments in different real estate properties. And I think that one of the things that I would say to the listeners is you want to deal with somebody that understands how to do a real estate transaction, understands that they're the hub of communication, and that they're managing the transaction for you. But you want to have someone that put their life on the line, that put their fortunes, as it may be, in their families and their kids' education and all that stuff. I've made good investments, and I can help other people make good decisions about whether it's a residential or commercial or a car wash or a mini storage facility or a mobile home or a $1 million lake property. We've done them all.
So part of this show, what we're going to do every week is we're going to be taking some questions. You can also email Packy. His email address is packyc@rsarealty.com. You can also call the office to make an appointment to talk with Packy or any of his other associates there. It's 603-332-1100. So every week we'll be taking questions. If you've got anything that you would like to ask, by all means, go ahead and email Packy or give him a call up at the office. So over 20 years in business, RSA Realty, did you start this on your own?
Yeah, I did. I started it, like I said, shortly after I'd been in real estate for about a year and a half. And we opened up in the Farmington office where we still have an office. At the time, there was a breakfast place called Jimmy's Restaurant on the first floor.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we opened the office on the second floor in a studio apartment. And it was 2 desks face to face. And it was me and a local attorney, Jim Shannon, who threw his lot in with me and came to work at RSA Realty right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Jim and I in a studio apartment. And then we grew that business into both a real estate business and a development company. Actually, I'm amazed to say that it's been 20 years, and Jim Shannon and I still work together on a daily basis. And about 4 years ago, we took up golf, and that's I swear to my wife Brenda, who is the office manager
Yeah.
and the bookkeeper, that we do talk business occasionally on the golf course as well.
Of course.
So happy to golf with anyone and give real estate advice.
Of course. So speaking of real estate advice, what you can go to a lot of these other real estate companies if you're looking for a house or you're looking to sell a house, but really what makes this different? And I hear you keep mentioning advice. It kind of sounds like that's like a mantra for your company.
Well, it is, because I think that whatever your product or service is, whatever your business is, understand what the core thing is that you sell. And what we sell is advice. And what I mean is I have a certain way that I like my listing agreements to be. I have a certain way that I like my seller disclosures to be filled out. And we give this advice. And, one of the unique things that all my realtors do is we put right in our listing agreements that we're not going to keep a real estate deposit. And
What's a real estate deposit?
So when someone does a purchase and sale agreement, they usually say, okay, I'm going to buy your house for $1 million, and I'm going to give you $1,000 deposit, and then I'm going to give you the rest on or before this date that you close. So it's usually just consideration. It's like an earnest money deposit, and it goes towards the purchase price of the house, and it's held in escrow, usually by the listing agent, but it could be held by a buyer's agent, could be held by a title company. So it's just a good faith gesture.
So it goes into a bank account and it just sits there.
It goes into a trust account.
Trust account, right.
In our case, it goes into a trust account, sometimes Attorney Shannon's trust account, usually the RSA Realty trust account, and we're stewards of that money and we hold it. In order to terminate a transaction, you sign an authorization and release of escrow, and that's the way in which a transaction is terminated. And until you release that escrow check, you're technically still under contract with that person. So a lot of times people are fighting over deposits, and they're usually $1,000 in a real estate transaction. Instead of moving on to the next buyer or the next seller and getting the transaction to a closing, which is really what you're hiring RSA to do.
Right.
We're not in the deposit getting business.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the real estate sales business.
Okay.
And that's different advice than you would probably get from another real estate firm. They would want to say, well, we're only releasing the deposit if they had one of these conditions in the purchase and sale. And I don't want to play gotcha real estate, meaning I think every realtor has their own style. Some people like my style. Some people may not. Some people prefer to work with Rachel in my office or Stacy in my office or Bob or whoever they want, depending on,
different personalities mesh together better.
Yeah, they do. And I don't want to, and I obviously I recommend highly RSA Realty realtors, but I got a lot of respect for a lot of people in my industry. I work with a lot of good people. When you asked me, why I got into this business, I met some people that were realtors early on in my career, and I said, they seem like nice people. And then, I went on to be a state rep here in New Hampshire for 4 years, and it was funny. I felt like there was a lot of realtors in the legislature.
Well, because in order to be in the legislature, you have to have the time, because we all know how much money you make being a state legislator, of course,
think to
right?
be in the legislature, you better be selling a lot of real estate, because you ain't making money being a legislator, that's for sure.
Well, just getting back to that, you were in the state legislature for 4 years, but where are you originally from? You're a local guy.
Yeah, no, I actually graduated right here in Dover at St. Thomas Aquinas around the corner. We talked about not knowing exactly how to get there from here, but I graduated from St. Thomas in 1988, but I grew up in Rochester and went to Rochester Public Schools until 10th grade, and then I had to go play hockey at the STA.
Oh.
Yeah. And, captain of the hockey team.
Yeah.
We didn't have good years that year.
So you are a local guy. So just getting back to your office, you mentioned a couple names there. How many people do you have working in the office? How many other realtors are there besides yourself?
We have about 10 realtors who, quote unquote, hang their license under my brokerage firm.
Okay.
So when you're a real estate agent, you hang your license with a broker, And we've got the really nice big office there in Rochester next to Staples, and we've got most people work out of there. But we do have an office in Farmington, and I got to be careful because I know I'm on the radio here, but I joke that the Jim and I and the boys kind of hang out in Farmington, and
Yeah.
my wife and her crowd hangs out in Rochester.
Well, they
most of
probably
the time.
like having you out in Farmington. They
There-
probably
there's-
like their own space. So.
There's some days when they
Yeah.
say, Packy, why don't you go back to the Farmington office?
Why
So,
do you have two offices? Because that's pretty close by.
I have two offices just because I want to have a presence in both of those markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're looking at doing listings in New Durham and Alton, it's nice to have a closing facility that's
Right.
in northern Stratford County. And then we have a nice closing room in Rochester, which is really close to the Dover market.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows us to be all over Stratford County. And I would say Stratford County is is the area that we focus in the most. We do some in Carroll County and some in Rockingham County. But it's a wonderful opportunity to work with a firm that's proactive in the real estate transaction and not reactive. So we manage the transaction or the hub of communication.
Okay, so when we get back here after the break, we're going to, you've already come with some questions that you've got, some common questions that people have for real estate. So we're going to answer some of those. And for next week, if you'd like to ask any questions of Packy, you can email him. His address is PACKYC@rsarealty.com, or you can just go to the website and rsarealty.com and just click on there and submit your question. Or you can call the office at 603-332-1100. So we'll be right back here. You're listening to the RSA Real Estate Sales Advice Show here on WTSN.
It's the RSA Real Estate Advice Show on News Talk 98.1 WTSN.
Welcome back to the RSA Real Estate Sales Advice Radio Show. I'm Dave Andreessen, joined by Packy Campbell, who's the founder. You can call the office for an appointment at 603-332-1100, or you can head on over to their website and ask some questions of Packy. It's rsarealty.com. You can see what it's all about. So RSA, how'd you come up with that name?
Well, I like to tell people it stands for Real Estate Sales Advice.
That's what I thought, but you told me that it didn't, right?
Well, honestly, my sister came up with that acronym about 10 years into the business. She said, RSA, Real Estate Sales Advice. So I thank my sister Sharon for that. But originally, RSA was Ryan, Sarah, Adam, which were my three oldest kids at the time. And then we had Baby Inc. and Baby LLC after that.
Yeah.
No, so we are a small family-run business. My wife works full-time in the business with me, and it's really nice to have an office manager that cares deeply about our customers, about our reputation, and about our business, and she has a real vested interest in it. And it's nice when you think about whatever job you have, whatever you do, Dave. You're working for your family, and you're working. We've all been up and down, and through good times and bad times in the real estate market. In my career, I've seen it up and down a few different times, and when you have a family business, your family is impacted by that. And it's nice to know that, this company is named after my children, and I want to do things in this company that make my children proud of me.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I could ever work with my wife. And my wife says the same thing about me. She says our our personalities are completely different. So how is that dynamic? Your wife has been working in the business since it started, right?
Well, it was interesting. I think my wife came into the business about 10 or 11 years ago.
Okay.
So for the first 7, 8, 9 years, my wife worked full-time as a nutritionist, which is great. You mentioned working with your wife. My wife is a registered dietitian by trade and qualified to tell me how to eat. So it's great. No, so I mean, certainly you have your good days and your bad days. And all kidding aside, people say, why do you have two offices? Well, on the bad days, I'm in Farmington.
Right.
On the good days, I get to work in Rochester with Brenda.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we work together. And it's nice because you want to enjoy what you do for work.
Mm-hmm.
And we really enjoy what we do for work. And I want to enjoy the people I work with. And, being a family business, my wife will tell you that, our employees and that work in various businesses that we own in the real estate firm, it is like a big family business. And we all try to work together, not only to get along, but to be happy and to enjoy our day. And it's that attitude that, when you're dealing with customers who perhaps are dealing with some stresses. I mean, real estate is death, going to the nursing home, divorce. Every once in a while, you get the wonderful couple with 2.5 kids buying their first home with the white picket fence, and it's wonderful.
That's wonderful, but that's not always the case.
That's not always the case. It's that multifamily that they wish they never bought, that they're tired of dealing with and maintaining. It's trying to do an investment and you're anxious about, is this a good investment? Is it a bad investment? You're dealing with partnerships sometimes. Sometimes you're dealing with 5 different siblings who inherited properties. So there's a lot of different challenges, and one of the great things about working with Brenda is she reminds me that I'm really good working with people who are under a lot of stress. And if people are going through a difficult time, I understand that might mean they're going to be difficult, and I'm here to be a resource and a sounding board
Hmm.
and a support mechanism for them. And it's okay to be under stress when you're selling real estate. And we can't promise you a smooth transaction, but we can promise you that we're going to take responsibility for every step on the way of that transaction. And when you do that, it helps everybody have a much better transaction.
Well, you've also been in their shoes before because you started off buying real estate. You said in your 20s,
Yep.
trying to buy some investments, especially investing in real estate. So you've been in their shoes and you understand the stress of, oh my goodness, I have this extra mortgage now and it might not work out. I mean, that's pretty stressful.
Yeah, it is. I have an uncanny ability to manage my risk in my mind. It doesn't bother me at all, according to Brenda. Brenda gets a little more concerned about how many mortgage payments we might have.
Right.
Um, but I bought my first property when I was 23,
Hmm.
and it was a classic flip property. I bought it for 130 grand. It was actually in Washington D.C. where I was living at the time, and within 2 weeks I had someone offer me 150 grand, which I promptly said no, thank you. I said, geez, if someone's offering me
Yeah.
that much more 2 weeks
And you
later.
haven't really even put anything into the house yet.
Yeah. So I actually had a partner on that deal, and he bought me out, and they still own the property in just outside of D.C. in 914 North Barton Street. I think it's a $2 million house now.
Wow.
I wish I'd stayed in that deal.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's it's wonderful when you can make good investments. But there is, I tell people, especially, when you're buying a multifamily, it's work, it's a job. I was, just this morning pulling wallpaper off of horsehair plaster to get a unit ready so we could paint it,
Right.
because you gotta be actively involved in all aspects of your business, and we're hands on in the transaction. And I think that's a great segue into saying, well, what makes RSA special is that, if you talk to Sam Crawley, he's one of the agents in my office. Sam was a septic designer, and Sam understands dirt. He understands equipment. He understands a lot of the aspects of the house. But even Rana or Rachel, I'll tell you a story. Rachel Gilman's she's got more experience than I do in real estate, and I'm honored to have her working as one of the RSA realtors. But she understands the difference between a boiler and a furnace, and she understands that when you're going to sell real estate, you got to understand the systems of a house to a degree that you can explain to people what a forced hot air system
Sure.
is and what a forced hot water
Right.
system is.
Yeah.
Explain to people, like, I have my top 3 favorite boilers, and I'll talk about different boilers that I like. And then I have my, septic systems. I don't really like Elgin systems. I don't like Presley environmental systems. I like the old stone and pipe systems. And when you hire an RSA realtor, we're going to be able to talk to you about what to expect when you're looking at a house that has a Presley environmental system. What are we going to see in a home inspection? Not so much that you can change it, but you'll know what to expect and you'll know how to manage your house. And we can talk a little bit about home inspections, or what to expect from a home inspection.
So I have a question for you. My wife and I, we live in a nice little development, and there's a few houses that just went up for sale. And we like to play this game where we sit outside at night, and we don't like to talk about our neighbors, but we say, geez, I wonder how much we can get for our house, because I just looked and this house is for sale for this, and this house is for sale for this. I wonder what we can actually get for our house. Not that we're intending on moving. So how do you price a house that is, you have somebody who comes to you and says, I want to sell my home. How do you go about pricing that?
Well, I think that's another thing that's unique about RSA Realty is, like, a lot of times realtors will do a beautiful CMA and they'll pull some comparables.
What is a CMA?
It's a competitive market analysis.
Okay.
It's when you take comparable properties to your house in your neighborhood. You say, well, this street, and this street are very similar. This property around the corner sold for that, and it was similar square footage, similar bedrooms, similar bathrooms. But the comps that you pick, you can kind of hand pick them, and you can massage that value up or down within reason. And sometimes I think one of the challenges in our industry is that, list your house with me, I'll get you $1 million. Oh, you're thinking about selling, you want to know what it's worth? 2 times what it is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what's different is we like to come in and we like to talk about data value indicators. And what I mean is, rather than doing a pretty CMA where we handpick some comps and make it look as good as we can possibly make it look on day one, and then you take the risk of overpricing your house, which I think is the biggest mistake you can make in any market. Never, ever, ever take an overpriced listing. Never start too high and say, well, I want to leave room to negotiate. Market value for a house, for your house, is the highest price a buyer's willing to pay, the lowest price a seller's willing to accept. That's a number in a free market society where the market's going to find that number. I've never had a seller come to me and say, geez, I can't believe it. I would have taken 20 grand less for that house. Oh my gosh. That doesn't happen. I think, kiddingly, what I would say to you, you and your wife should give me a number, and typically your house is worth about 80% of that number.
Really?
What I've found is that people intrinsically know the values of their house. They're living in the neighborhood. They're seeing what their neighbors sold it. And intrinsically, they always want 20% more than what it's actually worth.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. So I joke with people when I come in and I say, let's talk about where you think your values are. And almost without, it's a joke, but people have a number in their mind, and it's usually about 20% higher than what that number should be. So if you want a general rule, you and your wife should say, well, I think my house is worth 350 grand. Okay, it's probably worth a 295. So, and that to me is another, what I would call data value indicator, because it's an indicator of what your perception is of value. And that is a valuable piece of information to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to ask people, well, what do you think it's worth? And then I like to look at the comps, and I like to look at the square footages. But then we do a unique thing, and I guess this is a radio. So if you're a realtor and you like this advice, come to work at RSA Realty. But one of the things that I think a lot of people miss is that in New Hampshire we base all our taxes on property taxes, and in New Hampshire towns have to reassess properties every 3 years by state statute. And towns do a pretty good job of keeping up with the values and keeping up with the markets. And then they always have what they call an equalization rate or a market value. So I can take 5 houses in your neighborhood that are similar to yours, and I can say, oh, these were accessed for $100,000, and they sold for $125,000. I add up those 5 numbers, divide them both by 5, and then I have a ratio. And like, for instance, right now in the Rochester market, it's about 1.21 times the assessed value. So if your house was in Rochester, or it was in Dover, or it was in Milton, I could tell you what the ratio is compared to the property tax assessment, and typically that number is pretty close to where your market value is. So again, it's not my opinion of value, it's a hard data, it's math based on comps, and when you take 5 properties and you get to the average, is your property going to be 10% more than the average? Probably not. Is it going to be 10% less than the average? Probably not.
Right, yeah.
Is it going to be within 2% of either side of the average? Most likely. So we're able to have a very honest price point discussion that'll help you make the best decision that you can make about pricing the house properly.
Well, if you'd like to get in touch with Packy, you can go to his website, rsarealty.com, or you can email him at pacyk@rsarealty.com. And if you've got some questions, by all means, go ahead and shoot him an email, because we'll be answering some more next week and out throughout the course of the next few weeks here on WTSM. So you can also call the office to make an appointment with Packy at 603-332-1100. So that's all the time we have for today. So it was a good first show. Really enjoyed having you in here. So Packy, have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, and if you call the office, tell Brenda hello. She'll be answering the phone.
Well, there you go. So we'll be back here next week. It's the RSA Real Estate Sales Advice Radio Show here on News Talk 98.1 WTSN.